What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to Spill the Tea. As you can see outside, we're just covered in snow over here in the Northeast. We're sitting on about 2 feet or more of snow. And I love days like this, majority of the time, especially when I wandered outside and I could barely find the end of the street and the beginning of the sidewalk. Obviously, my dog loved it. He's a Siberian husky, so in his world, it's his summer. um, but I just felt compelled to sit here and make this video as I sat here and, I was journaling and talking to myself. Something inside me just felt compelled to just make this video and just let it kind of flow from the heart. So none of this video is structured behind anything. There is no main reason or hit points, to actually hit. I just wanted to vent, get it out, so I'm just going to talk. And what came to me this morning, randomly actually, was a conversation that my friend and I had. My friend Josh and I. And, we were having this conversation. And at the same time, the more that we started to dive into certain topics and talk about, our lives and uncover each other and build that friendship and stuff, we both unconsciously admitted something, to each other that, that we used to never really say out loud to a lot of people. And what that was that, when we were younger, when we were children and stuff, when we were kids, our other classmates used to basically call us like philosophers. And I know I can speak for myself, back then to me, it did not feel like a compliment. It didn't. Back then it felt like, they were calling me weird or that I think too much. I'm too deep as a person. I don't really fit in. And so how we related was both of us, separately growing up, we felt isolated. We even said to each other that, we felt alone on this planet for a very long time, wandering this planet alone, just basically going through the motions of life. Like we were some sort of lone wolves or something. And I know that when I was a child, and you feel like that, it's not really empowering to you. It's incredibly scary. You start truly wondering and questioning yourself if you really are crazy, if you really are too much, or if you'll ever actually be able to connect with anyone. Like, am I ever gonna have true friends? Am I ever gonna find true relationships? Or am I just stuck here wandering this entire planet by myself? So thinking back, like, I can remember feeling lost and feeling like I was going to be alone, forever in my thoughts. Like nobody would ever understand me. And every time I let my thoughts out to people, like that's also was a problem, is that's where I would lose people because I have so much depth to me, because I've questioned a lot of different things in my life. And so it was always incredibly hard, especially for myself, to try to fit in. Now as an adult, when someone calls me that, when they try to label me that as like the philosopher, honestly, it makes me happy now. Because a part of me, I'm not ashamed of that part of me anymore. And what hit me talking to Josh was this, we weren't alone. We just hadn't found other people like us yet. And so now that we had, it became a very mutual friendship. The ability to be able to sit across from each other or even on the phone, and literally talk for hours and go deep into so many different topics and subjects without being, without shrinking ourselves or shutting down. To me, that was something that I didn't think that I would ever have in a friendship. And, having that realization alone starts to change everything. You don't feel alone. Also, another part of my thought that starts to dive deep into and now talks about my dog, I started to sit there and think, and again, this is how my mind works, is individuals or people will sit there and say that the type of dog you love or that you have matches your personality. And to be quite honest, this is my second husky, and I've always loved huskies. They're incredibly different. They're incredibly stubborn at times. They're very independent. Most importantly, they're pack animals, you know, but also they can handle themselves. They talk a lot, especially my dog Leo. He talks a lot, and I'm pretty sure I posted a TikTok where we were sitting there at Starbucks getting a pup cup and a coffee, and he was talking to everyone out the window, to everyone that was in line. And the best thing that I love about them too is they don't always fully obey everyone. They don't just fully blindly obey commands and everything. Like, they will let themselves be known when they're feeling some way or when they want to do something. That's what I mean by they have their own personalities. The best part about my dog, Leo, is, who's now my service dog, he didn't just randomly become my dog. Like, I didn't go to a shelter, I didn't pick him out. I didn't sit there and scour the internet or search, clinics to adopt or to buy a dog. Again, I had already had a husky before in my lifetime, and at the time that I got him, it was a conversation that, me and my ex were having together about getting a dog. And it was incredibly uncanny, because he chose me. I literally found him a couple of years ago while I was working, and he almost got hit by a car. You know what I mean? So while I was driving and seeing him almost get hit by a car, I pulled right over to the side of the road and I opened my door. And the second I opened my door to get out to go get him, he instantly ran right to me and jumped right into my car. I found him legitimately on the side of the road, almost got hit by a car. And when he jumped into the car, I called his tags and I spoke with the original homeowner, and she had told me that this was the fourth time that they've tried to rehome him. So they've tried to rehome him 4 different times. And 4 separate occasions, he kept running away from these new houses until, we found each other. He has legitimately been by my side every day since that day, and that was 3.5 years ago. He is now 4. He's not just my dog or any ordinary dog. He is my service dog. He has been trained. He has been certified through the VA. I have the prescription and the official letterhead for him. And he legitimately stabilizes me every single day. Every now and again, I think back to that moment, because to me, it felt like life knew, or God knew, or the universe knew. It just felt like life in general knew that we needed each other. Life knew in that moment that I needed something beside me during that transition in life. That's when I was going through a tough time. I had made some incredibly ridiculous, immature decisions. And I was coming out of a relationship. And also at that time in life too, he needed someone. And when I sit there and I look at him, especially when I reminisce about that day, he reminds me of me when I was younger. Him running away on 4 separate occasions, that was his way of trying to find a home, I should say. He was trying to find a place to belong. He was constantly running from places that did not feel right to him. And at that perfect time in life, we found it at that same exact time. And I also think that that's where he also brought me back to nature, because I've always loved nature, but for so long, I stayed away from it. Until I found him, and then I fell in love with it again. I used to love it when I was younger, but then when I was going through a lot of my turmoil and not listening to my own advice that I was giving to other people, I created this mentality as a child that I had to go to war with everyone. And so I avoided nature for a very long time. Because when I was in that mindset and when I was younger, having that level of silence, it felt like the same abandonment that had happened to me through my parents. And then sitting here talking to myself and conversing and journaling, sitting in that dark room when I was a child and crying and asking myself why my parents had left me, I used to hear this little voice in my head. And it's also about it in my book as well too. And that little voice in my head used to sit there and tell me that it's going to be okay, that you are safe, and you will get to where you are meant to go in life. Back then when I was a child, and this is also in my book as well too, I referred to that little voice in my head as God, as like God sitting with me. As an adult, you can sit here and you can look at it and say, okay, well maybe it was my subconscious mind pulling me out of those dark times. Maybe it was that spiritual force of God pulling you out of your hard times. Everyone can relate to these things. No matter what you call it as, whether it's God, whether you call it your higher self, or whether you call it your subconscious mind, it's the same exact thing that everyone goes through. But what it mainly is it was that deeper part of myself refusing to let that much turmoil, that much pain, that much emotion break me. But either way, it doesn't matter. That little voice that was inside my head, it saved me. And for a long time, I thought I had to go to war with everything. That's where I created that mentality, that subconscious mindset that, fuck it, if I want something in life, I'm just gonna go get it. I'm gonna manhandle things by myself. If I wanted anything in life, I had to fight for it. If I felt misunderstood by people, I had to harden who I was. If someone tried to challenge me, I had to defend myself. So I wore that armor every single second of the day. And I didn't realize it back then, but the same thing that you do run from is the same exact thing that you actually need. Again, when I developed that mindset, I ran from that solitude, from that isolation, from nature itself. Because again, it felt like I was being abandoned all over again. I couldn't sit with that much silence. I had to fill that void with so many different things. Now, as a mature man, that isolation, that solitude, oh my God, it is incredibly peaceful. It drowns me so well. You know what I mean? So when I sit in nature now, I don't ever feel alone. I feel honestly connected to myself. I feel connected to the environment that's around me. I feel connected to life in general. I love being able to hear the bird calls, the many different bird calls. And I love being able to spot them. Even the past couple of years, my mom can say this, my girlfriend will be able to say this, and the people that I surround myself will say this, that, again, cardinals have always had this profound spiritual meaning to me, given to me by my grandfather. And so now I know instantly when their call is, and I can spot them so easily, even in winter when they are dark brown with just a little hint of red. What I love the most too is I love going for these nature walks on the trail in the rain, and I love hearing the rain hit the leaves and the petals, the little splashes that it makes on the ground. I love it in the wintertime like it is today. We're 2 feet of snow, which at 6 o'clock this morning, me and my dog were already out there playing for quite some time. It's his summer, so again, I allow him to run free and be who he is. But I love being able to watch that freshly blanket of snow cover everything, and it's nothing but pure silence. And the best part that brought me back to this level of nature is I love seeing my dog out in his own element, to just be free, to run free, the face that he makes, how he gallops through nature, how he doesn't miss any smell. how if he goes too far, he stops and he turns and he searches for me and he comes back without me ever having to call him. I love the smell of nature in general, and I love how still it feels, how open it is. To me, like, that's where my abundance is. It's endless beauty that has always been there. The same thing that I was trying to tell people as a kid, that there's beauty that is surrounded by you everywhere, no matter where you look. But it's also the same thing that I stopped listening to myself with. And back then, what I was trying to convey into words when I was a kid and I didn't yet have the capacity to be able to communicate or articulate this, was that what I have observed as a kid and what I had felt was that so many people become trapped in their minds. Like, it's almost like they feel like, like life is just work, sleep, and repeat. We have to stay on that mundane timeline. It always hurt me to see that. And that's where, as a child, I found joy. And that's why, when I went to school, I always was in a positive mannerism. But people always feel like there's no way out of that mundane lifestyle. And, sometimes it almost, to me, seems like, there's a mask being put over them. But what they fail to truly understand and realize is that, the one that's putting that mask over your eyes and over your own head is you are the one that's doing it. You're the one that's holding it over your own eyes. If you learn to open your eyes and be still for a minute, life is incredibly beautiful. Absolutely, life does throw curveballs and it sucks at times and it may become incredibly painful, or you may feel like you can't get through certain things. You know what I mean? And life will absolutely test you, but you embrace that suck. You embrace those moments. You learn from those moments. And when you learn from those moments, you apply the lessons that you've learned from those moments. You learn how to grow, how to evolve. And you don't stay stuck in those moments or in those negative mindsets. And when I picture myself 5 years from now, it doesn't feel chaotic. It doesn't feel delusional. It feels incredibly steady. I see myself being able to speak maybe on stages or in classrooms, doing lectures, maybe motivational speaking, maybe even based around my degree in psychology, or maybe something in between. Not because I want some sort of applause or validation or anything like that. It's just because I finally have that skill and that vocabulary and that level of communication and articulation for what that little boy back then was trying to say when I was in those dark moments. That it's okay to not be okay, but please don't stay there. And this line kind of hit me today when I was sitting there journaling and talking. And it hit in a way that felt incredibly real. Again, that feeling of being a child and isolated and an outcast, and basically being a lone wolf wandering in this planet alone, is that I was never meant to be the lone wolf. I was meant to be the wolf that understands the forest. Not isolated, not hardened, not superior, just aware, grounded, and connected. And so nowadays, even if I am sitting here alone making this video, I don't feel alone. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I even had a level of self-reflection that when I was a younger kid and I had the words and the communication ability to say what I had to say back then as a kid, it probably would have put me in those same rooms that I know that I will be in 5 years. But the difference is as a kid, I would have never had the capacity to be able to hold it all. that high level of awareness, the high level of regulation, that high level of communication and articulation skills, that emotional intelligence, that profound understanding that even if criticism is met with you, that both can coexist at the same exact time, that I don't need to harden myself or go to war with you just to make you, basically, how I would handle it is you would feel like I'm attacking you to either conform or anything like that. And these are skills for 30 years that I had to learn to adapt to in order for me to be able to convey and articulate and be in those same rooms. So also in the same token this morning, as I was journaling and self-reflecting, you need to be able to give yourself some sort of compassion, but also forgiveness, and don't stay stuck in those moments, because again, as I just said, like, as a kid, I should have been in these rooms and making these videos or having the skills I needed, but I would have never been able to have the capacity to hold all that. And so a part of me started to make me feel like I've missed out on my life for the past 30 years, but at the same time, I did not miss out on anything. The only thing I did was make more room to grow, to learn, to evolve, and to be able to contain that much level, to be able to be the bridge between the gap of what people are trying to say and what people are trying to feel. And that's really it. That's all I really wanted to say today. Not some sort of heavy ending, not some sort of heavy take, not some sort of heavy video, nothing with structure or anything. Just no forced takeaways from anything. It's just me being comfortable enough to just sit here and come from a grounding place of understanding. And I think that's it. That's just where I'm supposed to be. So thank you for watching this video. Again, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into who I am, into my thought patterns and the stories of my life and why I was always called a philosopher and things of that nature, and learning how to come back to who you truly are, that's where I created my book, A Child Called Home. Also, I created a guide, which is on Gunton Road. The link is in the description. And it's just there for if you're going through a hard time, and it's just there to help give you guidance. It's just there to help you, let you know that you're not alone. Also, if you are trying to become a creator or are a creator or stepping into this new atmosphere of making TikToks or Facebook Reels or anything like that, the app that I am building, which will actually be out for release in just a couple of days, I'm just waiting for the email from Apple from the approval. And thank you. Feel free to drop a like or a comment. I encourage that. Let me know that you're here. And just let me know if you yourself have ever felt like that lone wolf, or made to feel like, you were all alone, and that's what we're here for. We're here to build that stability between everyone. Thanks, guys. Bye.